Ruoli is touched by Zhiyu's call of sister and feels accepted by the Su family. Charlie gives Zhiyu his contact number and arranges for Zinn to be sent to Syria at a cost of $100 million for Hamid. Hamid is surprised and grateful. Charlie offers a strategy. Dig a bunker, store food for 3 years, and build fortifications on 8 mountains. Hamid is enthusiastic. Zinn resigns himself, and Zhiyu and Liona are released on the condition that their whereabouts remain secret.
Chapter 2711. Ruoli has always been a little inferior when she grew up. She had not been accompanied by her father since she was a child, and she grew up to the age of 18 before she was finally sent to her father as a bodyguard. After coming to Su's house, she could see Zinn's express love for Zhiyu every day, and she was very envious every time she saw it. She knew that that man was not only Zhiyu's father, but also her father as well. But she couldn't call him father in front of him, and she couldn't even act like a baby in front of him. He would show his love as a father only when no one else was present. Once there was a third person around him, he would immediately change back to the face of the Su family master. Therefore, Ruoli admired Zhiyu in particular. She felt that Zhiyu was a swan who had been loved by thousands of people and was born extremely noble. And she is nothing more than the ugly duckling in the fairy tale. And she is only the first half of the ugly duckling. There is no chance to become a swan. The illegitimate daughter is synonymous with the inferior in the upper-class society. Even if everyone knows that she is the illegitimate daughter of Zinn, they will only look at her with contempt, so there is still a world of difference between herself and Zhiyu. Now, not only did her sister Zhiyu look down upon her, but she also took the initiative to match her sister, which made Ruoli warm and moved in ecstasy. So, she took Zhiyu's hand and cried and said, "Sister, if anyone will bully you in the future, you can tell me, I will vent your anger. I have no other skills, nor have I been involved in anything. Learning, that is, I still have the ability to fight and kill. No matter who bullies you at that time, I will teach them severely for you." Zhiyu smiled and said, "With you sister, I will feel relieved. Sister is also someone who has super expert protection. If anyone dares to bully your sister, I will ask you for help." Ruoli nodded vigorously. Liona on the side hesitated for a moment, and said, "If you are with Charlie in the future, you must properly control your temperament, and don't always fight and kill as you did before." Ruoli nodded in shame, and said with a face of being taught, "Don't worry, Auntie, I won't do anything that hurts the world again in the future." Liona nodded slightly with relief. After the turmoil in Japan passes, you can live normal again. Change your status and start again. Ruoli nodded slightly with a dazed expression. In fact, she knew very well in her heart that referring to the crimes she had committed before, the Japanese would never give up searching for her in this life. It is impossible to be absolutely safe even after a facelift and a new identity, because her DNA has already been collected when she was arrested, and this is something she can never change. Ruoli has watched many criminal investigation programs. Many criminals have been at large for more than 10 or even 20 years. After such a long period of time, they change their environment, new identities, and even some people have completely changed their appearance, but the police still rely on DNA to bring them to justice. Therefore, she always felt that she had only temporarily escaped from Japan, but that incident might accompany her for life. Charlie said at this time, "Auntie and Miss Su, you two should stay in the room to rest. I will arrange for someone to take you away in the evening." Liona said, "Thank you, Charlie." Charlie smiled slightly. "All should be done." Zhiyu mustered up the courage and said, "Benevolence." Charlie looked at her and waited for her to follow. Zhiyu hurriedly said, "Benevolence, can I have your contact information?" Liona saw that her daughter mustered up the courage and asked Charlie for contact information. For fear that Charlie would refuse, she hurriedly added, "Oh yes. Charlie, you'd better leave us a contact number, so we can communicate with you if we have anything in the future." Charlie can see it through, the elder is opening up, it is not good to refuse, pulled out the cell phone and said, "I'll say my number, note it down then." Zhiyu embarrassingly said, "Well, mine and Mom's mobile phone was taken away by your subordinates." Charlie nodded and said, "In this way, I will ask Mr. Issac to arrange for someone to send the mobile phone back to you, and then let them send you my WeChat ID." Zhiyu was overjoyed and hurriedly said, Then you will work hard, benevolent. Leona remembered something at this time, and then said, by the way, Charlie, at the previous auction, someone never stopped increasing the price to buy the small set that your father lived. You were there, right? Charlie smiled and said, yes, it was me. Leona asked curiously, why did you let me buy it in the end? Charlie shrugged and said, I thought you needed that house more than me. Leona smiled with emotion, and said, thank you for showing love. It should be. After bidding farewell to Liona and Zhiyu temporarily, Charlie took Ruoli and came out of the room of the mother and daughter. As soon as he left the room, he saw that Issac was already waiting outside. He saw Charlie come out, hurried forward, and respectfully said, Master, I have already arranged it here. After half an hour, I will send Zinn to the airport, but he is here. There are several other people here who are also under our control. What do you plan to do? Do you want to send them with him? Charlie waved his hand. No, if you send them over, doesn't it mean that you have arranged a few servants for Zinn? Let Zinn go to Syria by himself. When he gets there, he will have to fetch water and eat. He has to shovel the pit by himself, so let him go and hone it. Charlie said again, as for the other people, just send them all to kennel. Issac smiled and said, okay young master, I will make arrangements. Charlie said again, by the way, I will send you an account later and ask Zinn to remit the promised $100 million, and then send him away when the money arrives. Okay. Charlie then sent the Swiss bank account number sent by Hamid to Issac. After Issac got it, he went to Zinn as soon as he got it. Zinn didn't dare to delay, so he immediately called the group's overseas financial officer. He asked the other party to remit $100 million to this account immediately. Although Zinn is not the owner of the family, he still has the authority to transfer $100 million. Therefore, the financial officer immediately reported to Hamid after verifying his identity. An account transferred $100 million. 10 minutes later, Charlie received a call from Hamid. On the phone, Hamid's shocked voice was a little incoherent, and he blurted out, brother, I just received a call. Shouldn't you arrange the remittance of $100 million? Charlie smiled and said calmly, well, I arranged it. Hamid exclaimed, brother, what did you send me so much money for? Charlie smiled and said, it's just a little care, and I have said that, I must support the brother's career in the future. If my brother is to give a tribute, don't forget your brother. Hamid did not expect that the huge sum of $100 million in Charlie's mouth turned out to be nothing more than the word, little care. He was so moved that he even choked in his voice, sobbing and saying, brother, you are really my reborn parent. My stumped leg is healed thanks to your magical medicine, but I didn't expect that you would still support me with such a large sum of funds. I don't know how to repay your kindness. Charlie smiled and said, acquaintance is destiny. If you and I meet once, it is destiny. Since there is destiny first, I should do something. After speaking, Charlie said again, by the way, after you have this money, I don't know what your plans are. Hamid said without hesitation, brother, let me tell you, since my leg was broken. Until now, my team has lost a lot of talents. I have never had a chance to replenish it. Now I have plenty of funds on hand. I plan to bring the old department together, and increase the size of the team as much as possible. Buy some relatively advanced weapons and equipment, of course, even heavy equipment, mainly for individual combat equipment, as well as upgrades on light equipment. Quote, Charlie said, brother, I advise you not to blindly expand the army at this stage. Why? Hamid asked very puzzledly, my brother, what do you think? Charlie said seriously, the place you are now entrenched can be said to be easy to defend and difficult to attack, plus the enemy's weapons and equipment. It's not very sophisticated, so it's not so easy to attack you. You blindly expand your army, but it doesn't make much sense. After a pause, Charlie continued, but in my opinion, your biggest problem now is that your defense is relatively weak. You have only a few helicopters, one fell one less, the same is true for armored vehicles, one less one. Instead of doing this, you might as well put more effort into infrastructure construction, and do your best to engage in infrastructure construction. Improved defensibility. Come up, then keep a low profile and accumulate your strength. Infrastructure. Hamid asked in surprise, "Brother, what kind of infrastructure can I do in my mountain nest?" Charlie smiled and said, "Of course it is to dig deep holes and accumulate food." After all, Charlie reminded him again, "I know, although your opponent is stronger than you overall, but they can't produce any real weapons with great lethality, so at most, they are some old fighters and artillery, which can't even use missiles, so between you fighting is not considered modern warfare at all. It can only be regarded as a war model from the 1940s and 50s to the 1960s and 70s. If it is modern warfare, your base area will be completely useless. The other side dispatched several sorties of bombers. Or simply launch a few tactical missiles, and it will blow you up directly. But fortunately, everyone can't fight the modernization war, so it makes sense for you to engage in infrastructure construction. Moreover, the more you do this, the more you have to strengthen your own base area. For example, you can launch the soldiers for the construction of a large number of air raid shelter in the village, artillery hole, then purchase a number of mining equipment. In the mountain uses cover to build positive fortifications, as well as the inverse slope of fortifications. In this way, the others as long as you are bombed, you can hide in the fortifications, and you can minimize the loss whatever the other party hits you with. Moreover, once you have the reverse slope fortifications, it will be even more difficult for the opponent to lay down your base area. Even if they can break into your valley, your soldiers can directly cover the entire area with firepower from the reverse slope fortifications halfway up the mountain. The valley, let them come back and forth. Hamid on the other end of the phone, when he heard these, his eyes lighted up. Charlie continued at this time, "You strengthen your defenses and turn yourself into an iron bucket. Then they will not be able to defeat you, and then they will definitely give up dealing with you and choose to go to war with other opposition forces, and you, try not to take the initiative to attack, just shrink in your base area, the enemy will come and you will block, the enemy will withdraw and you will raise. In that way, you can not only preserve your strength very well but also have the opportunity to continuously absorb the defeated skirmishers by virtue of your strong defensive ability." Hamid said excitedly, "Brother, where do you learn this?" "Yes. It sounds very reasonable." Charlie smiled and said, "Learned from my ancestors, let you do a good job in infrastructure and defense construction, and at the same time do not take the initiative to attack. To be king." Quote. After speaking, Charlie said again, "Let you wait for the stragglers who are armed by other opposition factions. This is called watching the fire from the other side." Hamid said with emotion, "I can further enhance my defense ability based on the experience taught by my brother, but if my brother's army asks me for help, then how am I embarrassed to really watch the fire from across the bank?" Charlie laughed and said, "What's the matter with this? Excuse me, if someone beats someone else, just look at it." Hamid said embarrassingly, "I'm afraid that will make the entire opposition camp spurned." Charlie said seriously, "It doesn't matter to spurn, the most important thing is to survive. We don't take the initiative to look for things, and we don't get too close to other opposition parties. We do our best to preserve our strength so that in case the opposing party fails one day, you here is another hard bone. If the other party can't chew, then they have a great probability of recruiting you. Once they recruit you, it will be easier to deal with, so that you can negotiate terms with them and change the position." After that, Charlie smiled slightly and said earnestly, "This is called forward and attackable, and retreat and defense." Hamid was silent on the other end of the phone. Charlie told these strategies and tactics, which he had never thought of before. Their current strategic situation is relatively simple. It is nothing more than fighting indiscriminately. As long as they meet, they will definitely fight. However, most people just pay attention to the present, there is no long-term systematic strategic planning at all. In contrast, Charlie, although he grew up in a peaceful age and space, he has never seen what war is like, but he has learned various allusions in Chinese history since he was a child and has a certain theoretical basis for various strategies. Moreover, in the few wars of the nation against foreign enemies, many classic battles were fought, which further highlighted Washa's unique strategic thinking. Therefore, Charlie synthesized his own cognitive foundation and quickly got a better understanding of Hamid's current situation. A relatively more accurate judgment. As long as Hamid can implement the strategic instructions of digging deep holes, accumulating food, and slowly becoming king, no matter whether the opposition can succeed or not, he himself has a chance to succeed. After Hamid heard this, the whole person was greatly inspired, and blurted out, "Brother. After listening to you, I really have a sense of relief. I will arrange for someone to purchase a batch of light industrial and mining equipment, and immediately start working on the main pass and surrounding build fortifications on the mountain and purchase more weapons, ammunition, food, and medicine, and be prepared to stick to the base for a long time. The relatively slow military development, the relatively weak military strength, and the relatively low military quality are common problems in some small war-torn countries. There is a huge disparity in economic strength between countries, and the disparity in military strength is even more shocking. Hamid himself is not from a real military school. In addition, he is in a relatively backward and chaotic environment, so he has no strategic mind at all. The strategy he can think of is to live as long as possible. In the encirclement and suppression the previous 2 days, the reason why he was not wiped out was also due to government intelligence errors. They thought that the village was just a small stronghold, but they didn't expect it to be Hamid's base camp, and Hamid's base is easy to defend. Attack, so it will fail. However, being easy to defend and difficult to attack does not mean that it cannot be attacked. The first time it was the opponent despised, but if the opponent prepares and makes a comeback, and Hamid does not care about defending, then there is a high probability that he will be overwhelmed. Although Charlie and Hamid are still relatively short-lived friends, he doesn't want to hear the news that he was killed someday. Besides, Zinn was sent there immediately. If he had just arrived in Syria and did not die in his own hands, but died in the hands of Hamid's opponent, it would be more or less embarrassing. After all, Charlie still wanted to keep him for future use. In case Zhiyu is unable to inherit the Su family, he can still let Zinn come back. As for what conditions Zinn had to pay by then, all the initiative was in Charlie's hands. So in other words, a considerable part of Zinn's $1 billion is also used to strengthen his personal safety. But Zinn's $1 billion was a great favor for Charlie. Because these $1 billion, and the series of strategic guidance he gave Hamid, are of great significance to Hamid. Therefore, while being moved, Hamid asked Charlie very modestly, "Brother, I understand the importance of infrastructure, but according to what you said, how should I implement it? Is there a relatively detailed plan?" With that, Hamid said apologetically, "I'm sorry, most of the soldiers under my hand have not read any books, let alone let them make suggestions." Charlie smiled and said, "This situation is understandable." After that, he further explained, "When I came to your place, I probably observed the topographic features of your place. Except for the relatively narrow entrance to the mountain each in the north and south, the others are almost all surrounded by mountain peaks, at least 7 or 8. Is it a mountain?" "Yes." Hamid hurriedly said, "There are 8 mountains in total. The 2 mountains on the east and west are the highest. The others are relatively short, but they are steeper. Heavy equipment and armored vehicles definitely cannot run over." Charlie smiled and said, "That could not be better. Depending on your situation, you put the infrastructure projects into 3 phases, the first 8 to be in this mountain fortifications built 8 positive and 8 the reverse slope fortifications. To put it bluntly, are 2 fortifications on each mountain, 1 front and 1 back, and then 2 frontal fortifications are added separately on the mountainsides on both sides of the north and south entrances. The construction of fortifications must be as strong as possible, relying on the structure of the rocky mountain, and then using reinforced concrete to create permanent fortifications to ensure that ordinary gunfire cannot destroy it." Hamid hurriedly asked, "My brother, what about the second and third stages?" Charlie said, "In the second stage, you must at least double the fortifications. Make sure that at least half of your soldiers can hide directly in the permanent fortifications. In this case, the opponent's artillery fire and intensive attack, your soldiers can be preserved in the permanent fortifications. As for the third stage, you need to ensure that all soldiers can survive in the permanent fortifications for a long time. The fortifications on the mountain can all communicate internally. The permanent fortifications can not only defend and live, but also be used to store strategic materials. After you achieve this, you can sit back and relax." Hamid said without hesitation, "Okay. Just follow these methods." After finishing speaking, he hurriedly asked again, "Brother, what suggestions and instructions do you have?" Charlie said, Besides, it is necessary to purchase a large amount of food and medicine immediately and store it in a dry and safe environment. For the first time, you must store a total of more than 3 years of rations. Hamid exclaimed, 3 years. So many. An adult person eats, at least 200 kilograms of grain a year. For 2,000 people, it would be 400 tons, and 3 years would be 1,200 tons. Charlie asked, then I ask you, how much is 1,200 tons of grain? Hamid thought for a while, and said, the current market price is about $300 per ton of wheat, and 1,200 tons. Including the transportation cost, which is $400,000. The money is not much, but the point is this. How to store more food. And the food will not taste good after a long time. Charlie said helplessly, now it is for you to engage in strategic reserves, not for you to eat fresh food every day. Think about it, you first keep your 3-year rations in your hands, and then purchase supplements according to the actual consumption of the year. In this way, you will always have an extra 3-year ration in your hand. And as long as the food is stored properly, it won't go bad after 3 years. The climate in the Middle East is relatively dry and it's easier to store, so you can use it every other year. A new batch of grain replaces the oldest batch. Using this method, you can guarantee that the food stored in your hand will not last more than 3 years. Once the opponent can't beat you down, prepare to encircle you, or trap you to death. Even if you can't get any food in, you can still after 3 years. Charlie concluded, the principle of weapons, ammunition, and medicine is the same. You must make more arrangements and plan for cycle rotation. You must have strategic reserves in your hands, and you must always prevent the people fighting with you for a long time. Hamid suddenly realized, and exclaimed, brother, I understand. This trick is amazing. Charlie said helplessly, what's so wonderful? This truth. In China, everyone who has studied in elementary school basically knows that you have come to China to study at a loss. Why didn't you learn history of China? Hamid is embarrassed. He was ashamed and said, hey, I mainly wanted to go to China to get a gold plate. By the way, I could practice Chinese well, but other aspects were really overlooked. After speaking, he immediately said, my brother, I understand what you mean. Yes, the main thing is to do everything possible to use those $100 million to strengthen defenses. Not only must the fortifications be strengthened, but the defense materials must also be adequately prepared. Don't worry, I will arrange for people to purchase food, ammunition, and medicine, and also purchase some infrastructure equipment and building materials. Charlie snorted and said, in this case, the problem of defense and materials can basically be solved, but there is another problem that needs you to start acting immediately.